to the 107th Connect and Share. And before we start the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land. I'm on Bidjigal and Gadigal land here, and pay our respects to their leaders, past, present and emerging. And welcome any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people tuning in or listening to the recording afterwards. And so I'm just going to go through a few things this morning, and then we're going to hand over to Ben Corcoran from Skills IQ New Zealand. But I'll just go through a few of our kind of general things first. So firstly, there's a couple of grants open at the moment. There's this regional tourism activation fund, which has just opened. And I'll put the address in the chat after I've finished chatting. Anyway, sorry, I'm blabbering on already. There's also, if you haven't already applied, there's the MOX funding, which is still available through Service New South Wales, and there's up to $30,000, and it does close soon, so make sure you get your application in for that funding. And there's also a $1,000 rebate, again, through New South Wales government for small businesses for safety equipment or any kind of COVID safe equipment. There's also more funding available for the Children and Young People Wellbeing Recovery Initiative, and that's up to $50,000 of funding available through that grants program as well. Just a few things that you might need to know. Firstly, there's some free training which is available through the Office of Children's Guardian, and there's both face-to-face and webinar training available. There's about 15 different sessions, anything from developing a code of conduct to the child safe standards and developing risk management plans. So all that is just so relevant to our industry and really great to have that available for free. So it's good to take take the opportunity while it's there. There's also this emergency management training, which is through Resilience New South Wales. So I've had a little look at this, and it's very comprehensive training, which basically provides first responders the framework and background for responding to emergencies. And it's an online training package developed by Resilience New South Wales, and well worth a look, just to skill yourself up and get back to speed after all the stuff that's been going on in the world. There's also the Department of Education Workforce Readiness, and Laurie has been part of developing the workshops for that in the Central Coast and Hunter Valley, and there's some opportunities. So just get in contact if you would like to be involved in an outdoor expo in the Central Coast in October, November time, just to get more young people interested in the outdoors. And just, I guess there's just been a bit of a political reshuffle. I'm sure you would have heard through the media if you've had your ear to it. Just Stuart Ayres has resigned, and there's been some new ministers taking on some of the portfolios which are relevant to us, including the sport and enterprise portfolio and skills and training. So yeah, it's just interesting to see how the political landscape shifts and what it could mean for our industry in the future. Couple of reminders just to put any events you have up on the website. I know there's been some information sent out regarding that. If you have any other questions, just send an email to contact@outdoorsnewsouthwalesact.com.au just to, get your event or business and your business up on our website, just so we can kind of promote you through our channels. You're also very welcome, and we encourage you to put the Outdoors New South Wales and the Experience New South Wales footer on your emails, just to show that you're a part of this network, and just to raise the awareness of our industry more, so so it's better for everyone. A few events coming up. There's the AGM on the 31st of August, and we'd encourage all our members to come along to that, to be part of the annual general meeting for Outdoors New South Wales and ACT. And that'll be via Zoom. And the guest for that is Karen Jones, who's the CEO of the Office of Sport. And you can RSVP to that on the Outdoors New South Wales website. So there's coming up to the AGM, as I just mentioned. There's the NOEC conference, the National Outdoor Education Conference, which has been postponed for a couple of years and will definitely be going ahead between the 26th and 28th of September. And there's all sorts of speakers and presenters from across the country, and a couple of international presenters as well. You can see the website for all those details and to register if you haven't already. We'd love to see everyone there. And there's also a masterclass, another masterclass. We had a really successful one a couple of years ago. I know, Liz, I just see you pop up there. You were part of that as well. The next one will be the 24th and 25th of November. So we encourage all our members to register for that, and hopefully we can fit you all in. So now I'm just going to hand over to Ben Corcoran from Skills Active New Zealand, and also one of his colleagues, I believe, Pete from Qualworks in New Zealand, is also going to talk to us as well. So Ben, I'm just going to hand over to you. If you need any help sharing your screen, or
I'm not sure
if
Pete's here. Pete.
Oh, there he is.
Just coming in right now. So Pete's probably here to see what's going on. Go, Pete. We're just talking about you, mate.
Sorry, I was slightly late, guys. I had some technology issues, but we're good.
Well,
fantastic. Nice to see you.
Well, I'll kick us off in a slightly formal way, and I'd like to acknowledge the how you open this and how you acknowledge the what we would call the iwi or the tangata whenua, the people of the land, and I'd like to introduce myself in a similar appropriate way. So, ko Araki te Mawanga, ko Waimakariri te Awa, ko Otatahi Turanga Waiwai, ko Ben Corcoran toka ingoa. So, hello, my name is Ben Corcoran. I'm currently the General Manager of Projects and Partnerships of Skills Active AOTEAROA. I live in Christchurch, Otatahi, and that is the land of Ngāi Tahu is the iwi here. So I live here in contentious terms based on a contract with them that the Crown entered into in 1840. I don't claim ownership, but I do claim affinity to Araki, Mount Cook, and the Waimakariri River, which flows out of the Southern Alps down into Christchurch, because as a mountain guide, I've spent a lot of time wandering around those hills, and I've had my best times in the mountains when I've been able to see that river, and I've had that big mountain looking down on me. So I'd like to acknowledge that as well. I am what we would call a whakapapatū, or I'm associated to the New Zealand Mountain Guides Association. I'm a glacier guide, alpine trekking guide, and a ski guide. I am a senior member of the New Zealand Outdoor Instructors Association with the higher level 2 qual and bush, rock and alpine. I'm a New Zealand Mountain Safety Council qualified avalanche technician, a former member of Alpine Search and Rescue Team, and a dad of 2 kids and a mortgage. And I'm proof that there is a difference between a mountain guide and a large pizza, because the large pizza can feed a family of 4. So now I have a job where I sit at a desk and write emails and chat into the computer and pay the mortgage. So that's me. My career has taken me from Fox Glacier to Iceland, to Canada, to Japan, back to New Zealand. I've worked for outdoor centres, tourism companies, I've run ski fields. I spent a big chunk of my time working for the New Zealand Defence Force, using experiential education and the outdoor mediums to improve the performance of senior leaders under stress, in a program that was researched and validated through their experience. And I've been at Skills Active for the last 5 years, but it turns out that some of those skill sets we all gather in this industry are really useful in a political world as well. So there's a real affinity with dealing with the trials and tribulations of ministers and trying to forecast avalanches. Same consequence, likelihood, exposure and vulnerability issues can get your head around that. It works quite well. So that's me. Thank you for letting me talk there. I was quite conscious about potentially, in New Zealand, it's the tall poppy syndrome and blowing your own horn, but from a Māori perspective, that's a pepeha, and I've shared with you who I am, because what I'm hoping is that somewhere in that story, there's a connection that you share with me. And so we have generated that shared point of view. And what I would like to hear from everyone else is maybe not quite as long-winded, but just who you are, and if there's a connection or something that you have an affinity from my story, if you could share that too, please. Start with Helen, because you're in the middle for me.
My name's Helen, and I've been working in the industry for about 22 years in various roles, from, you know, in Australia and Canada and New Zealand, and just, yeah, from leading groups to running my own business to having it kind of suffer all the consequences of COVID. And now I'm working for Outdoors New South Wales and loving it. So yeah, just I'm so passionate about the industry and developing the skills of the next generation. I've also got two girls, and trying to, yeah, really empower, in particular, young girls and women to join the industry and to be part of, be part of being in life and in nature and outdoors and learning through doing. So that's me. Who else would like? Liz, why don't you tell us your story?
Yeah, hi Ben. I'm Liz, and look, I've been in the industry for a fair while, definitely not leading the extensive sorts of programs that you do, more so staying closer to home and doing small journey-based programs and residential camps, etc. I work for Skills IQ, so the organisation that writes the training package in New South Wales, so I'm interested in what you've got to say today. I have 2 kids, and the large pizza is not enough. We need 2.
Fantastic. David, would you like to give us some background?
No worries. Thank you, Helen, and thank you, Ben. And I do, having worked for politicians as well as the outdoor industry, I can see exactly how there is that correlation between avalanche safety and certainly media and communications and challenges that come with politics and the landscape there. So thank you for sharing that. And also I zigzag to New Zealand quite often, and Christchurch is one of the places that I do really enjoy going to. I love the funky graffiti artwork. I mean, it's tragic what happened to the city in terms of the earthquakes, the multiple earthquakes, but the way in which that's rebounded and the vibrancy of that community is really wonderful. And I really do love going there and just experiencing that community.
Thanks. Nice to hear from you. Dan, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I work for the ACT Education Directorate, but I've been in the industry for about 20 years, and I'm currently in a sort of policy government type position to support our 52,000 students that we're trying to get outdoors, plus all the privates and independent schools that piggyback onto the hard work that we do as public system.
Nice, thanks. Jeffrey, how about you?
Been around for a little while, but unfortunately I'm not staying in this meeting for too long, unfortunately. But look, currently working with Scouts, work with Liz on training package, work with Dan with some of those outcomes in the ACT. So Stuart also there from Scouts. So certainly across a few things in the industry, and I enjoy that, being collaborative and working across, which is why, although I'm not staying long, I'm going to be listening to the recording after this, Ben. So thank you for sharing what you're sharing, even though I'm not going to be here to hear it, most of it.
Thanks, Jeff. Stuart, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself? No, he wasn't there. Couldn't get him earlier either. How about our stand-in Laurie? Laurie, I know it's not Laurie.
Hello, I'm James. I've recently come on board to support Laurie, which has seen me enter the outdoors world. I am business manager for outdoors. Basically, I do whatever I need to do to keep the wheels running while Laurie's not here, as you see. I'm a father of 4. I have small businesses of my own. I'm enjoying getting into this world. I don't get out and about much because I'm always working, because I'm a father of 4. But yeah, so far so good. I enjoy listening to this and I'm learning quite a lot. So thank you.
Thanks, James. How about you, Pete?
Sorry, I just have to figure out how to unmute myself. I follow Ben's lead. Engaro awa ngā waka o te motu tēnā koutou. Te mihi tuatahi ki te atua, nāna nei ngā mea katoa, tuarua ki ngā mate kua wehi atu ki te pō. Haere, 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 whakaoti atu rā. Hoki mai kia mātou nei ngā kānohi ora, e kara pene pene mai ana I roto I te whakaaro kotahi, e te wairua kotahi tēnā tātou katoa. Ka mihi atu ki a koutou, nā koutou te kaupapa, nā mātou te whiwhi. Anei māwai whakatinana nei ki tēnei kaupapa, kia whai whakaaro ki ngā hua, kei wainga nui I a tātou. Ko Pete Hodkinson, toku ingoa, ko Colin, rawa ko Chrissy, oku mātua, ko Dave, rawa ko Joe, oku tuākana. No Shotishov mātou I Chechia, I tai mai mātou marunga tupoti o HMS Terpshaw, ko te whānau Papish mātou. E noho anau ki pōne ke mahi ai I tēnei wā. So I just introduced myself a little bit, but also said that really happy to be here face to face, more or less in person, to share ideas about how we might be able to work together, even though I'm actually more here in an observational listening capacity than anything else. I am a father of none. In my personal life outside of work, so I work as a business development manager for QualWorks, which is an organization that focuses on primarily auditing and safety in the outdoors, and that's probably the most direct connection to the group here today. In my spare time, I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athlete, so I travel to compete and train and teach pretty regularly, and also am a musician. So between those things, I find it hard enough to commit to a TV series, let alone having a family or a pizza. So yeah, nice to be present, and looking forward to hearing what's coming across the table today.
Thanks.
Awesome. I had this great conversation with Laurie, and it went everywhere, and it was a classic kind of COVID. We have a classic COVID relationship. Like, it took us 6 weeks to connect, to have a conversation, and I agreed to talk the next meeting you had, and then I went down into that rabbit hole of COVID in my house, and I've come up 5 weeks later, and it's this welcome to 2022, I guess. and so from a certain extent for me, it's like, well, what do you want to talk about in the limited amount of time? So what I'd like to do is share some research that I have, and maybe that'll put a little bit of context on things, and then hear from you at which part you'd like to talk about. And my goal here is to share the New Zealand experiences and what we've done well, and maybe there's some lessons learned, and just start that conversation. I don't claim to have all the answers or to be right, but hopefully, yeah, we can get the juices flowing from everyone. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
I'll just try and share my screen again, like last time. So hopefully you can see a photograph of two friends of mine. Technically, they're friends of my dad, but Simon Priest and Mike Gass. And these two likely lads, I think they're both retired now, university professors, one from the US and one from Canada. And I always like to joke about they literally wrote the book on adventure programming a generation ago. And a lot of the other work that's fine-tuned that has only been only happened because of the work they did. And although Simon was retired when I saw him last about 7 years ago, he was still traveling around and trying to work out, a retired North American university professor just means they've retired from academic publishing, right? They don't stop working until they die. And he had just come back from a keynote speaker role in India, and he had some research. And I want to be really clear, this isn't my research, this is their research, and I'm not claiming it. And in fact, Simon, if you ever come across this recording, it's a sales pitch, right? For someone to book you in. But it's got some really neat gems in the system I'd like to share. I do have a paper I can email afterwards which sums a lot of this stuff up, which I will do. And part of their research is to look at the life cycle of adventure programming, and that's everything from the letting the mountains speak for themselves, living in the moment of a tourist experience, through challenge by choice with outdoor education, Kurt Hahn's philosophy of empowered experience, that's the outward bound kind of model, and then that forced experience that underpins adventure therapy and all the different mixes that fit into that. So they've kind of looked at, well, those are their 4 definitions of types of adventure programming, and they've tried to track these and over a bit of a life cycle for outdoor centres. And they've kind of tied it back here a little bit to something a little bit more in nature around birth, growth, plateau, decline, and death. And this is their take on adventure programming from a global perspective. And hopefully we'll all hear a reasonably au fait with Outward Bound and the experiences that merchant seamen were having in crossing the North Atlantic. And this is quite close to home for me because my family comes from Liverpool as well. And it was the merchant seamen sailing out of those shores where they discovered when the ships go down, it's the old salts that survive and the young ones don't have the grit. So how do you give them some grit? Well, you go and give them a hardy experience so they know that they've got a bit more in them than they think. And that's essentially the birth of Outward Bound, because the midshipmen apprentices at 14, before they were outward bound across the North Atlantic, had to do this course in Anglesey in Wales. And so that's the birth of a whole lot of what we do, and it's kind of grown in multiple directions. And the US kind of repeated that process with the National Outdoor Leadership School. And I don't know if you've come across them, they operate in New Zealand as well. And that's kind of an American spin on Outward Bound. Outward Bound is a cool concept because you can go and wander around in the safari in Africa, and there's even an Outward Bound school in New York City for country kids to go to. And they sleep out on the street. That's their wilderness experience in a cardboard box. And that kind of blows my mind, is because all the same paradigms and philosophies fit in that situation. And then with every kind of cycle in different countries, there's a plateau, there's regulation and litigation and sanitization of the experience, and programs can go into decline. And then I don't know if we're an old enough industry to have reached that point of ceasing. But who knows what COVID's going to do? There's a bit of a perfect storm brewing in New Zealand, which we're hoping to divert it away from that, actually. Now, they wrote this probably 7 or 8 years ago, and part of when Simon came back through New Zealand this was kind of their interpretation of where things sat. And so this isn't based on hard evidence. They were actually looking for feedback. Where do you think your industry sits in this bell curve of travel? And I would reflect on that in my mind, place that they need to be flipped over. And we've just had 10 years of litigation and rules and regulations, and definitely, and then COVID on top of that, and some financial pressures and a restructure of our vocational education system, where we're taking what we have and turning it into something similar to what Australia has, which I believe is Australia is doing the reverse. So all of that is disruption. So it's a little bit of a perfect storm.
Sorry, Ben, just to jump in on that, I would agree with you there. And just having seen the practices in New Zealand, I think many of them, in my opinion, are actually well ahead of where Australia's at. And so I do think our industry is lagging behind in some areas, not hugely so, but I definitely think because of the reasons you outlined, I would agree with you on that.
Well, it could actually be that New Zealand is sitting somewhere where Ireland is on the top of the downslope. And it's a double-edged sword for the likes of Pete with his industry. And one little stat that pops into mind is that when WorkSafe New Zealand decided to regulate adventure tourism and outdoor education industries, it was based around a set number of businesses they believed would have to register and have to be audited. So had to prove they met the new health and safety law prior to doing business, rather than be measured against it after something goes wrong. And it was about only half the number it actually registered. And when they looked into why that was, is that people just lowered the bar on what they were doing. There's a weird rule in New Zealand that says that